AI is incredibly useful, but there has been so many people pushing it and using it for get rich quick schemes and scams that it has felt like it's just going to be a flash in the pan. And I think that's put a lot of people off using it for actual productivity and to make real hard earned money. One of the perfect examples is this recent trend of faceless AI channels, which for me made absolutely no sense. One, because it was basically against the YouTube policy and eventually it would be taken down, so it's not a sustainable business. But on top of that, these people were talking about how they're making $10,000 to $20,000 a month and then selling courses for $500 instead of just making more channels when they said it was so easy. So none of that made sense to me. But annoyingly, like I said, it puts people off using AI for actual productivity. And AI, if treated properly, can be incredible. And I use it to get so much done. And it has earned me a fortune in the past year, but not by some get rich quick scheme, but by augmenting and upgrading my current work processes. If you treat AI like an assistant or an employee, it can be incredibly useful. And here's some of the ways that I use it. As I talked about in a recent video that you can watch up here, which was about being lazy and getting stuff done. If you're a bit of a procrastinator like me, using AI as a way to ensure that you never have to work with a blank sheet again can be incredibly powerful. You see, as humans, when we have to start something from scratch, especially if it's something we're putting off now and then, or if it's something we just really don't want to do, or if we're having writer's block, having a blank page in front of you is incredibly daunting and it causes resistance and procrastination. And by getting AI to just make a base copy of what you want to do, so for example, a base script for a YouTube video that you then go and edit, you'll find yourself getting so much more done so quickly. And you can use free ChatGPT for this because you're not going to probably use most of the script it churns out. So you don't really need to worry if it's accurate. It's more just editing something is far easier than starting with a blank page. Another area where AI has massively improved my life over the past year is in fitness. You see, when it comes to having your own personal trainer, that can be incredibly expensive. And for the most part, until you start getting up into levels, having a daily personal trainer is probably more expensive than it's worth. You see, when you get to the point where you can't make any more gains to help you with the minute changes you need to make to your body. But for most of us, it's just about hitting the parts of our body that we want. And even ChatGPT is very, very good at this. What I did with this was essentially took some photos of myself, took all of my data from a scales that I ordered on Amazon that does body weight and everything. It's not 100% accurate, but that's not the point. It's just to get some base metric to start with. And then some photos of the gym that I use. And then fed that all into ChatGPT and gave it my goals. And then essentially used it to start out with a plan. Was the plan perfect? No, but I was able to start off with this and then talk to a personal trainer later on after a couple of weeks getting a feel for it. And then after speaking to that personal trainer, using AI to essentially augment and continue on when I needed someplace else to go. And while it's not perfect, it can be a great way to bounce off of it as if it is a real person giving you a real plan and kind of figuring out the nuances of getting in shape and diet and so on. Like I said, it's not perfect, but in a lot of cases, done is better than perfect. An area where I have used it to huge success over the last year is that I have to read a lot of documents. I have to read a lot of articles about F1 for my channel. I have to read a lot of things for my documentaries, and I have to go into detail in topics from years and years ago. And I will use AI to basically dump tons of information into and give me summaries, pick out the best parts. It's not always perfect at doing this, and it does still suffer somewhat from hallucinations, but you'd be surprised how much detail it can give you. And once you kind of wrap your head around the topic, or if, like in the case of F1 for me, if you're already quite knowledgeable about the topic, you will immediately spot the errors anyway. So you kind of start getting more confident around it. And with the newest ChatGPT, the amazing thing you can do as well is ask it to fact check everything by doing online searches. And it will actually go and search through Google or whatever it uses, probably Bing, to get the information, double check it, and give you sources. So you can dump stuff in, ask it to basically give you a summary, and then check the original article against the summary. And as long as you start learning to treat it like a person and correcting it when it's wrong, and then learning how to talk to that person, it becomes basically your full-time research assistant. And it has cut down so much time for me in reading major documents where I can kind of, for example, dump in a 20-page document, tell me where all the important parts are, and then I can jump back into the document and just check through those points and then expand on that. It's brilliant for that. I think one of my favorite things about AI over the last year, though, has been using it with mockups for thumbnails for my documentaries. Basically, for the documentaries, I've had these great ideas for what I want, but then my skill in illustration and artistic skill is way off what my kind of mental vision is. And I found AI is great to kind of put those into non-perfect mockups, but to kind of bring my vision somewhat to life, so that then I can use my base Photoshop skills to kind of then tweak and bring that to exactly where I want. Or in other cases, using it to give me a mockup, kind of visualize what I'm thinking, and then send that to a graphic designer who can get it done. But you will be surprised at how close it can get to the final image that you want. And if you use a few different tools to kind of build this along with Photoshop afterwards, it can really bring anything you have to mind. And it's not just images for that either. If you have something in mind that you want to get done, but your skill level isn't perhaps there, you'll be surprised how many times you will think you'll need to use a different tool, and you'll ask AI if it can do something, and it will just do it for you. So in terms of mock-ups and prototyping, it is brilliant. And that goes as well for anyone who is a programmer. I have used it to make prototype codes for me, and it is getting very, very good at coding. But if you use it in terms of prototyping, it is brilliant for that as well. Like I said, essentially, if you start treating it like an employee, it is brilliant, because you will always have to train your employees to work the way you want. And if you treat AI exactly like that, a new trainee employee, you'll be surprised how much it can get done and how much smarter it will become for you and useful it will become for you over time. Data reviews or putting together spreadsheets for you is incredible in this as well. One perfect example for me is that in one of my documentaries, I was asked to basically give a frame by frame or a second by second account of exactly what was in this 90-minute documentary. That would have taken me hours, probably 8 hours to type up myself, but I was able to basically figure out by just asking ChatGPT what it would need to put that together, that I could export the timeline, which had a lot of data on it anyway, and I had left kind of notes and texts on the timeline. It exported that from DaVinci, brought it in, and was able to create the base Excel sheet for me. And then I was able to go back and forth with ChatGPT to kind of get it as close as possible, and then just fact check it against the timeline to make sure it was correct. And it cut what would have been 8 hours work down to an hour, which is absolutely insane. Again, that is 8 times productivity you've just unlocked there, or 7 hours you could be just eating pizza and watching TV. So use it as an assistant or an employee. I can't stress this enough. And when it comes to using it as an assistant or an employee, one of the best things I have found AI has been useful for is problem solving. Look, I'm a programmer, so I love problem solving anyway. But a lot of the time, you just want to get the problem solved and moved on, especially if I'm editing a documentary, which, like my OJ documentary, took 250 hours. And there was points where, just because I'm relatively new at video editing, kind of 2 years now, 3 years, I still didn't know the in-depth stuff around color and around some of the fusion pages. And I kept getting stuck on stuff, or when I was creating the documentary, which is going on streaming later this year, I would get stuck on certain things about rendering and sound for broadcast level. And I could basically then just screenshot the exact point I was at on the screen, drop that in to the AI along with exactly what the streaming service was looking for. And it could talk me through step by step how to fix it. And then when I get stuck on another point, or if it gave me the wrong fix, I could just drop where it got me to back in and say, look, this is what I've gotten to. What do I do next? So using it as a problem solver and expert can massively up just the amount of work that you can get done without getting stuck throughout the day. And finally, for just brainstorming ideas, this has probably been one of my favorite things because AI itself, I have found, won't come up with incredibly detailed and brilliant ideas. You will be more creative than AI ever will. But what it will do brilliantly is kind of lead you down the right idea. And what I've done for my documentary channel, for my F1 channel, and so on, is consistently used it every couple of weeks where I'll kind of set an hour aside, drop in a couple of ideas that I have, and then some constraints, and say, look, I want you to give me 100 ideas based off this, or on this topic, or on these topics, and let it spurt them out. And essentially what I'll do then is drop those all into a document. And when I'm stuck, when I can't think of any ideas, I'll go back to that document or back to AI again, look through the list. And more or less what always happens is one idea doesn't give me the finished product, but it leads me down a rabbit hole of, oh, if I did this with this, then I can move down here. So it's just like this back and forth. A lot of the time now, I find that we're working in isolation. We're working from home in offices by ourselves. If you're an entrepreneur, you probably have no employees if you're just starting out, for example. And sometimes just having that kind of bouncing board to throw stuff back and forth off of can really help. So if you want a place to start with, that is the one I'd go with, which is just using it as kind of just a random person who will listen to your nonsense 24/7 without getting bored or without telling you to feck off, and just use it to bounce ideas back and forth off. But those are some great ways to use AI as an assistant or an employee. There are genuine ways you can use AI to automate things as well. And if you're interested in that, let me know in the comments, and I'll do a video on some of the ways I've automated systems for myself using AI. But just be really, really careful of a lot of these kind of get rich quick things, because for example, with YouTube, it was always going to be problematic because YouTube wants proper content from people, and it knows that customers don't like AI generated content. So therefore, they're obviously going to make sure that fully AI generated content would be a problem. And you're going to see this in a lot of industries. And sure, if you're the first one to come up with an idea of something you can automate with AI, you can surely make money off it. But just be careful about these ones where you start hearing lots of people talking about it, because they're usually trying to sell you something. Subscribe.